Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many of you join in. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. This is our monthly town hall meeting held the last Sunday of every month. And I'm looking forward to having some good conversations, answer some of your questions, but more importantly, also look for your feedback, your ideas in terms of what you would like to see happen in a congressional district. What we are hearing from people is a lot of pending action items, and they want engaged leadership to take charge and get stuff done. And that's the reason why we are running. So our typical format is please send in your questions via the chat, and then we'll pick them up. What we do is we run through some of the questions that arrived via the RSVP, and we run through those first, and then we start picking up questions from the Zoom chat. So that's a simple format. We'll run this through, and we try to keep the questions concise, precise. That way we can run through as many questions as possible. In these days of TikTok videos and YouTube shorts, it seems like keeping the video a little shorter in length is probably prudent. Otherwise, nobody watches it. And one quick tip for you as you listen to my response to many of the questions is use the search box at rishikumar.com and enter keywords. So the search box works really good, and it'll pop open policy write-ups that we have. We have hundreds of policy papers on the website. They're not obviously sitting on the main menu because that would be a bit much. So what you have to do to find them is to search. And any feedback that you have on a website, anything at all, would be very much appreciated. Okay, so why don't we get on with this? I'll run through a quick intro of myself, and then we'll start getting through the questions. So I would like to remind everyone that the general election is coming up November 8th. And, the primary election just finished on June 7th. And there were 8 people running in that race. And we were quite delighted with the outcome. We actually emerged top 2 once again, like 2020. And there were some very formidable candidates running against us, and we were quite happy with the outcome. And so now in the November general election is just 2 Democrats who are left in play, and the incumbent and myself. And the Mountain View Voice had this headline, Kumar tops field of challenges for Eshu's seat. And there were quite a few challenges, which was a bit surprising. Because typically Anna Eshu had no challengers, and this time we had a total of 7 challengers, and almost, I would say, what was it, like $2.2 million of, I believe it was $2.2 million that was spent in this race, made it the most expensive race right here in Silicon Valley, and that too for an incumbent who has been there for like many decades. In fact, Anna Eshu herself, she spent $1.14 million in a primary election when she typically would spend like $50,000 sending out one single flyer or something. Now she was running TV ads. So it tells you that she was quite worried about the primary election and was taking it pretty seriously. And we believe that the verdict of election night, June 7th, we were quite excited when we saw the first results, because Anna Eshu had dropped below 50%. And then when all the votes were done counting, she ended up at 47.8%. And And this is for the very first time in decades that NISU has dropped below 50%. That had never happened before. Now you look at the trajectory, the drop, I should say, it's down from like in 2018, she was at 72%, 74%. And then when we ran the first time against her in 2020, she dropped to about 61%, 63%. And now she has dropped to less than 48%. And it's very interesting because if you see the graph, if you look at the data, you can see the data at rishikumar.com/election recap, rishikumar.com/election recap, and you will see a graph there. And we show how she has dropped. But more importantly, it's a dramatic fact that her percentage in the primary election carries over to the general election, which means that Anna Eshoo will likely end up around 48% in the general election. So that's bolstering our team's energy. We believe we can win this race now, and we are pushing it very hard. So I just wanted to provide you that statistical perspective of what just transpired. So we call it the plummeting support after 30 years. And we are building up to 150,000 votes that we had against Anna Eshoo in November 2020. And we need a total of 150,000 votes in November 2022. In just about 100 days, it's actually exactly 100 days away. The November 8th election will be done, and our target, if we receive 150,000 votes on that day, it's basically a retirement for Anna Eshoo, and we believe we are ready to be there. And you see some of the press are calling it out, like the Stanford Daily has called out. We are concerned by the donations Anna Eshoo has accepted from the pharmaceutical industry. That was from the Stanford Daily back in 2020. And then Palo Alto Daily's Daily Post, David Price, he had this in one of his publications. At age 78, with 28 years in Congress, there's been whispers that it's time for Eshoo to retire. And so we have never seen this type of statements from the press in her past runs. And then San Mateo Daily's Matt Grocott had this to say, that if I'm a Democrat, he, which is Rishi, gets my vote. So there are some good reasons why, people are sort of looking at my run and finding it as something that would benefit Silicon Valley. Why is that? Because I work in the tech industry. Silicon Valley has never had a tech-savvy congressional leader ever in a million years of Silicon Valley. And working for the software industry in the big data analytics, AI/ML space, I believe my agenda is to grow the economy and ensure that we are bridging the income inequality gap, creating opportunities for everybody, but also jumpstarting the innovation economy to such an extent that we will continue to dominate the world with our technology, with our software, with everything else. So that's my agenda. And my part B of my agenda is to essentially tackle some of the burning challenges, the social justice issues that we have, the women's rights issues that we have, healthcare issues that we have. These all have been burning for the last, burning and sitting on the back burner for many years now. And nothing really got done. We tried, but the key word is we tried. And then you look at the housing, traffic, homelessness. Those are big challenges. Climate is a big challenge. So these are burning issues that have been pending for decades. And my plan is we already have policy papers on many of these agendas. We have taken the time to do the research. We have talked to professors from universities, industry experts, and we have come up with these policy statements so that next year we begin our efforts to see how we can tackle some of these burning challenges. For example, drought. Today, interestingly, it was raining, and we just had a little sprinkle. Our team was out there knocking on doors, and some of them had to take a break for some time, and that's how So we do need the rain, and we are dealing with the drought year to year. But the only plan we have is conservation. We should come up with a different plan, a plan to expand the water reservoirs, bring money in for infrastructure. So that's some of our ideas in terms of what needs to be addressed, and we plan to engage with a lot of energy and an innovative approach to tackling these tough challenges. For example, with climate change, we believe carbon capture devices need to be deployed, or grow algae in the ocean that would basically help deplete the carbon in the atmosphere. So we believe in grappling the bull with the horn, as they say, and that's always been what has worked out well for me. And if you look at my stint as a council member of our city, Saratoga, we took on a very powerful water utility company, the San Jose Water Company, and we rejected 9 of their rate increases because they had been essentially gouging people with their super high water rates. Seniors were hurting. They were looking at the bills and crying. They were like, "Oh my God, how can we pay this type of bill with surcharges and everything else?" And then when burglaries were rising, we took on that challenge, over 100 neighborhood meetings, and we managed to drop burglaries by 50%. And then when you look at crisis leadership, when recently Saratoga High students were stuck in Europe, in Prague, we mobilized the press, we mobilized an email campaign directed to the CEO of Lufthansa, and we got them to change their stance within 24 hours. And so that brings me to the very first question. And so let's get going with the question. So Marcella, she has more like a statement. She's saying, "You are a hero, Rishi. I like what you did in rescuing the students from Prague, engaging the press and the email campaign. Hats off to you." So it's Marcella, I truly appreciate that. So it was an ugly situation. Lufthansa had canceled a flight of Saratoga High School students who were on their way back from Europe after almost a 2-week musical performance. The band, orchestra, and the choir were playing in different cities, primarily in Central Europe. And when they got to Prague to take the connecting flight from Frankfurt, they found that their flight was canceled. And they were told that this was like July 15th or so, or sorry, July 22nd. They were told that you would get a flight in August. And that was like, wow. And the stress levels went up. Some of the minor students were separated from their parents. Some 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-olds were also there, siblings. And they were all sort of struggling how to get out from there. And there was no answer. And I got a lot of phone calls, text messages by the time I got up on a Friday morning. And that's when we rallied the community to send emails forcing Lufthansa's CEO to take action. But we also got the press engaged, ABC7, NBC, Universal, NBC. And one of the press reporters had covered the aviation industry. And I believe he ended up contacting his counterparts as well, the Lufthansa USA counterparts to Germany. And we pushed it from every possible angle we could. But the pressure of the community, I believe, was very important because over 330 emails had gone out in just about a few hours. And interestingly, I found out that the Lufthansa CEO from Germany had actually spent time in Saratoga as an exchange student. I've not validated that yet, but somebody pointed that out to me, which was very interesting. But having spent time in Saratoga, I believe that would also have sort of helped the Lufthansa CEO to take quick action. And we got out in nick of time because right the day after the students left, Lufthansa had shut down with a strike. So that was a very timely escape. And I'm glad that we managed to get it done. So Marcella, it's great to hear from you. And one of the things I would like to point out is we need to regulate the airline industry because people ask me, why did this happen? And I believe based upon statements I had seen from the CEO that there were some operational challenges. that they had all these bookings, but they did not have the manpower because they had not really expanded or added staffing. And that led to these last minute cancellations. And so anyway, I think we need to regulate the airline industry to ensure that these types of painful delays, cancellations don't happen, because there is too much happening. I mean, parents had to come back to work. The kids, high school students had to get ready because school is going to open in a few weeks. And we just cannot see these types of frequent cancellations. And well, one of the questions I was asked also was, why did they have to take a charter flight? Because we didn't have enough chaperones, and to separate them out would mean that minors would travel alone. It's not like there was entitlement in play that, oh, we can only travel if you get a chartered flight. It wasn't like that. It was sort of like Lufthansa US actually mentioned that this is what is needed, and they asked the team out there in Prague to work with Lufthansa Germany to see if we can make it happen. So anyway, all's well that ends well, and I'm quite happy that we managed to get the students out. Now, we had Brennan Sandura, he had sent out an op-ed piece, and we got quite a few emails. This email that we got was from Roseanne. I do not agree with the statement that Anna Eshoo had only 4 bills in 30 years. And we got a few similar emails from that. And I was actually asked to put this as a town hall meeting question. And so we did. And we will not mention some of the other people who also email. But all we will say is Brennan's op-ed piece was well researched. He had all the facts of the election night. He had looked into the data analytics. And then he also had looked through all of Anna Eshoo's sponsored bills that turned into law. So here is our take, that the only bills that matter are bills that turn into law. And the only bills that matter that elected leaders should be talking about is the bills that I worked on. You know, when I talk about my work with burglaries or crime or anything else, or stopping a high-rise development at Mountain Winery, these are things that I took a personal interest in, that I led the charter. Now, I'm not going to pick up bills of other people on my city council that they took a lead in, because that's not how it works. So, you know, when Anna Eshoo claims co-sponsorship as something very important, we don't agree with that, because each bill has hundreds of co-sponsors. And we actually called it out on the debate in 2020, when Anna Eshoo talked about her co-sponsorship of the Green New Deal. What I responded back with, I'm sorry, Councilman Eshoo, there were hundreds of co-sponsors, 103 to be precise. What specific bills that have you done on climate? And the answer is 0. So if you look at the 4 bills, the only bills that matter are bills that Anna Eshoo has sponsored herself. Co-sponsorship, it's, you know, like I said, it doesn't matter. So there are only 4 trivial bills, and these are like renaming a post office and things like that. So I would like to draw attention that, you know, we have this, I believe it was Matt Grocott. And so his quote on this one was, Anna Eshoo, this is from the San Mateo Daily Journal, Matt Grocott, he's one of the writers. Anna Eshoo has been in the House since 1993, has done little to serve the district during her 30-year tenure, and 4 bills have come out of her office. Most were to change the names of post offices. So this is also a validation from a journalist, a reputed journalist. And so the bottom line is, please go to rishikumar.com/deceptive, and you will see the proof trail on that. You know, as a mechanical engineer, I only believe in sticking to the facts, and we are quite clear on that. So here is Dan. He's talking about the Chips and Science Act. It's rather a long question. The bottom line is Silicon Valley chip industry will benefit, and this will address the threat from China and restore our supply chain's integrity. Why is Anna Eshoo not taking charge of such initiatives? So that's a good question. In fact, you know, this happened last week, where this will end up, I believe it has not ended up at Biden's desk yet, but This is basically going to lead to spending about, or rather the federal government spending about $52 billion on the chip industry, because there is too much reliance upon China and Taiwan. And based on the situations been in a flux it is, and the pandemic, how we were exposed with the supply chain, the plan is to invest $52 billion in the industry, half of which Intel will get, but there's some of the other companies from Silicon Valley will also benefit. And so HR 7178, and that was Michael McCall from Texas. He's a Republican. That is very interesting. When we saw that, we found it very interesting that why isn't a Silicon Valley representative taking the lead on that, and why not Anna Eshoo? Because it used to be the value of Heart's Delight with orchards, and then it became the value of Chips Delight, not the potato chips, our semiconductor, because, and then in the 80s, a lot of the semiconductor left Silicon Valley and they moved to Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. So it's time to bring it back. And I believe, I was very thankful for this particular bill. It was needed. And as your congressional rep, I can guarantee you that I will, coming from the tech industry and how important it is for the vibrancy of America and for us to dominate the world of technology and innovation, I will be proactive in launching many of these types of bills and initiatives to be there to help Silicon Valley. And sometimes help is not needed. So, my objective is to actually get together with Silicon Valley executives and talk about issues, bring the CTOs at times, bring the CEOs, bring the innovators, bring university professors, and talk about, how we can grow the economy, how can we make it better. That collaborative action will be very helpful. And at that point, I will not be taking them to national television to talk about the issues, but proactively point it to them beforehand that here, please do not monetize people's privacies. So my stance on this would be take early action, take quick action, but ensure that Silicon Valley will be alive and thriving, alive and kicking for the sustainable future. Okay, here is the next question. Laurie from Pacifica. She's talking actually about a point where, this is the gray whale cove. And apparently an accident happened about, 30 years, 3 decades of lost lives. So essentially people have gone down this particular point on Highway 1, and it's a rather long question, but why hasn't anything been done yet? And Laurie, my take is this is just not right. And as your congressional leader, I will ensure that we fix this in the very first year. That area needs to be fixed. There is no raised embankment there, and we can do something to prevent lives. And Laurie talks about how a father went down, and then the son went down 30 years later, pretty much in the same exact spot. That's a tragedy. So Laurie, my plan is to have a district office in Pacifica, and to ensure that residents of the coast will have a chance to meet me, meet our district office, and bring up these types of issues. And I promise you, I will be proactive. Okay, here is Colleen. I'm livid. Nancy Pelosi's husband has made $700,000 on his NVIDIA stock, and this is insider trading. For his latest purchase in June, Paul Pelosi brought up to $5 million in stock options, equal to 20,000 shares of NVIDIA, leading semiconductor company. Congress's CHIPS Act will elevate the chip production industry as it faces increasing competition from China. What would you do, Rishi, to prevent this from happening in a country? I'm so angry. I presume she's not so much angry about the chip investment as the insider trading. And so, Colleen, thank you for the question. My pledges, I will never do insider trading. None of my family members will be doing that insider trading. I think rules that apply to Congress should also apply to us in Congress. That's my pledge. And secondly, I will do my utmost to stop insider trading. These types of transgressions just cannot happen. They are actually the halls of Congress are hallowed ground, and we cannot be tainting them with these types of action. So I will do my best to stop it, Colleen, and that's my word to you. Okay, Tom has a question. Federal government should establish a multi-cloud strategy to achieve the cost savings, get the best and most affordable cloud technology. Right now, it's one vendor strategy, that is Amazon. What would you do? Now, this again is a failure of an issue. We should be pushing the Google Cloud. We should be pushing for a multi-cloud strategy with the federal government and ensure that Silicon Valley companies will generate benefits from that. But more importantly, you're not putting all the eggs in one basket with the one vendor strategy, which is AWS. So it makes perfect sense, Tom. And I will be pushing for this. The multi-cloud strategy at the federal government is very, very important. And we will ensure that as your congressional rep, I'll be there listening for these types of feedback ideas, and I'll be pushing for it. Here is Lisa. The Build Back Better will likely phase, it basically includes tax, climate, prescription drug provisions. Do you agree with the outcome? This was the compromise between Manchin and the rest of the Democrats. And Lisa is asking if you agree. And my take is yes. Firstly, it's bipartisanship. Secondly, it is a much smaller spend compared to what we wanted. But when you're deadlocked, you have to move forward with something. So I'm glad we have moved forward with this. And even if it is via the reconciliation bill, but there is also pressures with the inflation that are ahead. 9% inflation is what I saw. And so this may not be the time to spend, like just pour money into the ocean. That probably, so many states were saying that we have so much more money that was thrown to us during a pandemic. We don't know what to do with it. So this is not the approach where, we just print money and we spend. Caution is very important. The other day, our city manager's salary was in play as a council member, and I voted against the raise because just the COLA raise would be adequate, I felt, because the CalPERS liability is coming up. In 2014, our city had to deal with a $6 million CalPERS liability. And then we have inflation issues, property tax is going to go down, is what our finance director was saying. And then we have to go through union negotiations, labor next year. So, we also don't have money for road repair now, and we are borrowing money, we are taking money from one of the building repair funds. So when things are bad, you have to just tighten your seatbelt and brace for the ride. And we are seemingly in that that's the pressure that America is facing. And I think the tax, climate, prescription drug provisions were right, but it's a good start. Let's finish that, and then we can figure out what else we can do. The Build Back Better was very ambitious, and I'm not going to debate whether that was needed or not. But when things are deadlocked, you just have to move forward. I always believe in taking one step, two step. This is how we have tackled some big challenges, by taking that very first step. Okay, here is Manisha has a question. Members of the Network Contagion Lab at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, found evidence of a sharp rise in evolving patterns of hate speech directed towards the Hindi community across the numerous social media platforms. Rishi, will you stand up to the phobias and hatred? And Manisha, yes, I will, plain and simple, because I have seen this happen over the last 3 years. We had 2 Indian Americans who were shot in a bar somewhere, I believe in Kansas, and they were just sitting and watching a good football game. And there is sort of like these things happening across the country. And back then, I mobilized 10 Indian American elected leaders from the Bay Area that included Ro Khanna and Ash Kalra, and a bunch of other city council members, school board trustees, in making a joint statement about this. So, I can see that phobias are increasing. Phobias for Hindus, for Jews, for Muslims, or even anti-Asian hate crimes. And I'm against all sorts of phobia. Please search for phobia on my website, and you will find that you will find my policy papers on this topic. We need to be united as a country. There is diversity. Diversity has a tremendous value, and we cannot have these types of phobias that are basically being promoted actively by certain organizations to dominate the speech in this country and to subvert the interest of a particular community. And for example, I believe there's also the, anyway, I will leave it at this. And so Manisha, it was nice to hear from you. And my pledge is that I will always stand up and speak against this type of hate speech, because this is not very American. And I will be quite vocal to express my take on this. Okay, let's go to Luna. Luna has got a thing about the results of the New York Times Siena College poll of 849 registered voters nationwide found that only 13% of Americans believe the country is heading on the right track. What's your take, Rishi? Are we on the right track? And, it's very simple. We are on the wrong track today. Some of the choices we have made during the pandemic haven't helped us with how we have spent money, like I just referenced. Some of the issues with inflation, not right, gasoline prices, it's the common man is hurting. And now we see a downturn with the tech economy, for example. Companies are beginning to lay off. So we somehow, we had too much money pumped into the economy that sort of kept us going during the pandemic, but we will pay the price for it. And all indicators are that we are heading for a recession. We need some engaged leadership to push back and put the country right on track. We cannot debate that, no, we are not in a recession or we are not dealing with inflation. It's all in the numbers. You can see the numbers, right? So the housing market is going to correct as well. So this is going to cause a lot of discomfort. And the other day I was doing some research on how did presidents perform in a recession. And, we found Reagan was the only president who sort of turned it around. Bill Clinton got into a recession. So it was like out of 5 presidents, it was these 2 who actually did well in spite of a recession, because seemingly they took some clear action. And Bill Clinton, in fact, turned it into a surplus. So I think this is the time for real action. And are we taking enough of that? My take is no, I don't think so. We are doing enough to put the country back on track. We need a lot more energy. We need some new ideas, and we need to get us back on track. That's what I would say. Okay, Ray has this to say: I'm one of your constituents in Saratoga, and I'm dismayed at the construction project at Keto Village. I thought the council was conducting a paper exercise with the housing element. Do you see these sites as developed down the road? And Ray, I think Keto Village was an SB 35 project because we did not hit our housing element. Similarly, we have a new housing element quota, about 1,500 housing units, 1,900, I would say. And it's a paper exercise. We have put it on paper. We have come up with sites, but it is becoming more and more easy for land developers to apply SB 35. And instead of getting 30% or 40% affordable housing, they can only get 10% affordable housing. It's all about the math. It's all about the economics. And when they put it on Excel spreadsheet, they can tell how much money they're going to make from these projects. So it's no longer a paper exercise, because apparently for the Gateway project in Saratoga, there were 35 or interested parties who approached the seller that, hey, would you be interested? So I believe we are going to see construction. We are seeing construction at the Keto Village, 91 housing units, only 9 are affordable. And then we will see a lot more over the next 10 years. It is going to change the future of Saratoga. So Ray, I obviously was against it. And what I talked about was the issues with water, schools, sewers, traffic. We need to consider proper urban plan and spread the housing out. And that's how we can address or put density around transit centers, which we don't have here in Saratoga. So essentially, this is my approach. It's the managed growth philosophy. Please look at my website, rishikumar.com/managed growth, which also has different op-ed pieces that we have written. And that's all I have. Let's see if there are any other questions. Okay, I don't see any questions at this point. That was all. We have a Google Doc. Our team is constantly taking the questions, putting it into the Google Slides for my reference as these questions pop up. I don't see any active questions right now that are pending. So I truly appreciate you joining the meeting. And it's summertime. I know everyone is very busy, but thank you for taking the time to join this town hall meeting. If you still have questions that pop into your head, please email us at campaign@rishi2022.com or rishi@rishikumar.com. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of Sunday. Bye.